They laughed at him, mocked his skin, his silence, his very presence. But what they didn't know, this quiet black boy had fists trained like weapons, and today, he wasn't walking away. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. Hey loser, got anything to say today? The hallway buzzed with the end of class chatter, but that voice cut through like a knife. Chad's voice, loud, smug, and full of cruel laughter, echoed off the lockers. Heads turned. Some students chuckled nervously. Others just looked away, pretending not to notice. Marcus James, 15 years old, didn't respond. He kept his eyes locked on the floor, his shoulders hunched, clutching a math textbook to his chest like it was a shield. He walked slowly, deliberately, trying to disappear. It was a routine. Blend in. Be invisible. Speak less. Be less. It never worked. Yo, mute boy. Chad barked again, stepping in front of him. You deaf or just too stupid to talk? Kyle and Jake, Chad's ever-present sidekicks, laughed loudly. Too loudly. The kind of laugh that made people turn around. It was a performance, and Marcus was their favorite punching bag. They surrounded him. Kyle knocked the book from Marcus's hands. It hit the floor with a dull slap. Jake shoved him lightly on the shoulder, not hard enough to get caught by a teacher, but just enough to humiliate him. His backpack slipped slightly off his shoulder. Marcus bent down, calmly, slowly, and picked up the book. He didn't look at them. Not once. He didn't speak. Chad smirked. Man, this dude's like a statue. You sure he's even alive? Jake waved a hand in front of Marcus's face mockingly. Hey, Earth to Marcus. Nothing, and that's what got under their skin the most. Not the silence, but the way it didn't seem to bother him. Like he had some secret strength they couldn't understand. Like they weren't even worth his words. But to everyone else watching, it just looked like fear, because Marcus never fought back. Never yelled. Never ran. He just took it. That day, like every day, Marcus eventually walked away. Shoulders down. Books clutched tight. Steps quiet. And the hallway moved on, buzzing again with noise and gossip and phones that at first glance. Marcus seemed like the perfect victim. He didn't have a flashy phone or cool clothes. He didn't play on any sports teams. He sat alone at lunch and always seemed to be sketching or reading. His voice was rarely heard. Teachers said he was quiet but polite. Some students didn't even know his name, but no one ever asked why he was so quiet. What no one saw, what no one could see, was what happened after school. Marcus lived with his grandmother in a small apartment on the east side of town. It was nothing fancy, but it was warm, and more importantly, it was peaceful. His parents had passed away in a car accident when he was 8, and since then, Grandma Rose had raised him with love, patience, and quiet strength. She noticed the bruises on his arm once he told her he fell in gym. She didn't press, but she saw the pain behind his eyes. That's why, 3 years ago, she signed him up for a local boxing program at a worn-down gym near the bus depot. Not because she wanted him to fight others, but because she wanted him to fight for himself. At first, Marcus hated it. The gloves felt too big, the bag was too heavy, and his arms burned after 2 minutes. But Coach Darius, tall, scarred, and kind, never gave up on him. Quiet's good, Coach would say. Means you listen. Quiet fighters are dangerous. They study. They strike when it matters. And Marcus listened. Every single day. He trained 6 days a week. Rain or shine. He learned footwork, speed, defense, timing. He watched old fight tapes and shadowboxed in his room before bed. Slowly, his body grew stronger, leaner, sharper, but most of all, his mind grew stronger. He didn't tell anyone. Not at school. Not even the few kids who sat near him in class. His silence wasn't fear anymore. It was focused at school. Marcus kept his head down not because he was weak, but because he had learned control. He didn't need to prove anything to people like Chad. Not yet. But that didn't mean he'd let it go forever. Every shove, every insult, every book knocked from his hand. It all added fuel to a fire he kept burning deep inside. And one day, that fire was going to explode. They thought he was powerless. They were wrong. They had no idea they were messing with a boxer in disguise. A storm just waiting for the right moment to hit at school. Marcus barely said a word. But at home, he spoke in silence, in sweat, in fists. His room wasn't like most teenage boys. No gaming consoles, No loud music. No clutter. Instead, the walls were covered in inspiration. Muhammad Ali floating above Sonny Liston. Mike Tyson glaring like a lion. Floyd Mayweather mid-dodge. Calm and untouchable. Each photo was more than just a poster. It was a reminder of what was possible. In the corner, his old worn-out boxing gloves rested on his desk like trusted friends. A jump rope lay coiled beside them. His notebook was filled not with math problems or science notes, but with boxing combinations, motivational quotes, and training goals. This was Marcus's world, and his real sanctuary was a few blocks away. Tucked behind a row of auto shops on 10th Street, a faded red sign that read Darius Boxing Club. Most kids at school didn't even know it existed. But Marcus had been going there since he was 1-2. It all started after one particularly rough day in middle school. Another incident. Another bruise. Another teacher who said, "Ignore them and they'll stop." His grandmother, Mama Rose, had seen enough. She didn't believe in violence, but she did believe in strength. And she believed Marcus needed to learn how to protect his spirit. So she walked him into that dusty little gym with peeling paint, rusty lockers, and an old man hitting the speed bag like his life depended on it. That man was Coach Darius, a retired pro boxer with knuckles like rocks, eyes that saw everything, and a voice rough as sandpaper but full of truth. He looked Marcus up and down that first day, then said, "You ever thrown a punch, kid?" Marcus shook his head. Coach grunted. "Good. Means I don't gotta unteach bad habits." From that day forward, Marcus showed up. Rain, snow, even on holidays. No excuses, no complaints. And in that gym, he found what school could never give him: respect. Coach Darius didn't care how quiet Marcus was. In fact, he liked it. Talkers gas out, he'd say, showing Marcus how to breathe through his nose, how to roll with a punch, how to strike from the hips. But quiet fighters? They observe, they study, they wait, and when they move, they end things. That stuck with Marcus. He wasn't the fastest kid when he started, or the strongest, but he was the most focused. When other kids checked their phones or gave up early, Marcus stayed late. He'd mop the floor if needed, just for more time in the ring. Coach started calling him Stone. You're solid, steady, quiet, like a rock nobody sees coming. And it was true. By the time Marcus turned 15, he had hands like lightning, feet that barely touched the ground, and a jab that landed like a whip crack. But more than his body, Marcus's mind had transformed. Boxing taught him more than how to fight. It taught him discipline, patience, control. Every day at school was a test. When Chad bumped into him, Marcus imagined slipping the punch. When Kyle mocked his clothes, he pictured dodging, countering. When Jake knocked his books down, Marcus didn't flinch because he'd taken real hits in the ring. They thought his silence was weakness, but it was the calm before the storm. No one at school knew about the gym. No one knew he sparred with adults twice his size. No one knew he had won his last 3 amateur fights with clean knockouts. And Marcus never bragged, never posted videos, never told a soul, because he didn't need attention. He needed progress. Every time someone laughed at him, Marcus stored that moment in a corner of his heart, not out of hate, but as fuel. He remembered every shove, every cruel word, not to get revenge, but to remind himself why he trained, why he woke up before dawn, why he never quit. He had learned to turn pain into power. Coach Darius once told him, "Marcus, when the time's right, you won't need to say anything. The world will hear you when your fists speak." Marcus believed that every insult at school, every act of bullying, it wasn't destroying him. It was sharpening him, preparing him, because when the time came, he wouldn't need to shout. He'd let his fists do the talking. And they'd say everything. It was a Friday afternoon, the kind of day when most students couldn't wait to leave, grab snacks, and hang out with friends. But Marcus, as usual, walked out alone, clutching a secondhand book he had borrowed from the library. He found his usual quiet spot under the big oak tree behind the gym, the one that gave him just enough shade and silence to escape. He opened his book and began to read. Something about perseverance, something that made him feel a little less invisible. Then, the voices came. Loud, mocking, familiar. "Well, look who's playing lonely philosopher again," Chad said, his voice soaked in sarcasm. Marcus didn't look up. Kyle and Jake followed. grinning like hyenas circling their prey. This time, they weren't just looking to tease. They were bored, and that made them dangerous. Kyle snatched the book from Marcus's hands. You reading this trash? What are you trying to be, some kind of genius? Jake moved behind Marcus and yanked the backpack off his shoulder. Let's see what our little mouse is hiding, he said, unzipping it roughly. Marcus stood slowly but said nothing. The contents of his backpack hit the ground. Books, a sketchpad, some snacks, and then his gloves. They were old. The leather cracked. The color faded from years of use. But they were sacred to Marcus. His very first pair. The ones Coach Darius gave him when he completed his first full month of training. Without missing a day. Whoa, what's this? Kyle snorted, picking them up like he'd found a toy. This dude thinks he's Rocky or something. Jake snatched them and mockingly put one on. What? You box your pillow at night. Scare off the monsters under your bed. Chad bent down and looked Marcus in the eyes. This you, Marcus? You think you're a fighter now? For the first time, Marcus looked back, right into Chad's eyes, the NO blinking. No fear, no anger, just calm. Chad froze for a split second. Something about that stare. It wasn't the stare of a scared kid anymore. It was something else. Something focused. Dangerous, even. But he quickly brushed it off with a laugh. Man, you really are weird. They dropped the gloves to the ground, stomped on them, and walked off, laughing. Marcus knelt down, gently picking them up. He didn't brush off the dirt. He didn't cry. He just stood there for a long moment, staring at those gloves, his hands clenched. That night, the gym smelled like sweat and determination, like it always did. The sound of gloves hitting leather filled the air. Coach Darius stood by the ring, watching two teens spar, but his eyes shifted when he saw Marcus walk in. There was something different about him. More purpose in his steps, more fire in his eyes. After the session ended, Marcus stayed behind. The gym was quiet, the lights buzzing overhead. He stood in the middle of the ring, hands at his side. Coach, he said softly. Darius looked up. Yes, Stone. I want in. Coach raised an eyebrow. In what? The underground youth match. Next month. I'm ready. Coach leaned on the ropes, studying the boy he'd trained for 3 years. You know what that means, right? That ain't just sparring. That's real heat. Real punches. Real blood. You step in there, you're not just fighting another kid. You're fighting every doubt you've ever had. I know. And you'll be fighting kids who've been training for years. Some of them fight to survive. They don't play. Marcus nodded. Then why now? Marcus looked down at his worn gloves, dirt still clinging to the fabric. Because I'm done hiding, he said. I've spent years letting people think I'm weak. I never cared what they thought before. But now, it's time they saw who I really am. Coach was silent for a moment. Then he stepped into the ring and placed a firm hand on Marcus's shoulder. All right then, he said. But no holding back. You train harder than ever. We sharpen every skill you've got. You eat, sleep, and breathe boxing till fight night. You ready for that? Marcus nodded once, his voice steady, calm, unshakable. I was born ready. Coach smiled, a rare, proud smile. Then let's get to work. Word about the underground youth boxing tournament spread like wildfire. Through Jefferson High and beyond. It wasn't just a small event anymore. Local boxers, high school athletes, and even a couple of amateur scouts were rumored to attend. Everyone wanted to see what the city's youth had to offer. For some, it was a shot at recognition. For others, a way to earn respect. When the fight lineup was posted on the gym wall and later shared across social media, one matchup stood out immediately. Marcus J. versus Chad Taylor. The comments exploded. Wait, Marcus? As in the quiet kid from school? No way he's fighting Chad. Chad's been training at PowerFit Boxing. This is gonna be brutal. Yes, that Chad. The same loud, arrogant bully who had tormented Marcus for years. He had been casually training at a flashy gym for a few months, mostly to look cool on Instagram and brag about it in school. To him, boxing was another popularity booster. He never expected Marcus to show up, and definitely not to be matched with him. Fight night arrived. The warehouse gym was packed. The underground ring was lit by harsh overhead bulbs, surrounded by folding chairs, shouting teens, and buzzing anticipation. Rap music bumped through a portable speaker, echoing through the gritty concrete space. Chad showed up in flashy gold trunks with Big C written across the waistband. His friends cheered and filmed him on their phones as he shadowboxed for the cameras, all cocky smiles and bravado. Then Marcus walked in to no fancy gear. Just basic black trunks. No entrance music. No crowd. Only Coach Darius walking beside him, a towel over his shoulder and a calm hand on Marcus's back. Marcus stepped into the ring and started warming up with slow, sharp combinations. Shadowboxing with quiet intensity, that's when Chad saw him and burst out laughing. "You really think you can fight me, bro?" He smirked loud enough for the crowd to hear. "This is gonna be fun." Marcus said nothing. He looked Chad in the eyes, one nod, then turned away. The bell rang. Round 1. Chad charged in fast, wild, reckless, fueled by ego. He swung big punches meant to impress the crowd, but Marcus, he didn't even blink that he ducked, weaved, and sidestepped with surgical precision. Every punch Chad threw missed by inches. The crowd started noticing. Yo, Marcus is dodging everything. Chad grew frustrated, his swings getting sloppier. Marcus didn't punch back. Not yet that he was studying. Calculating. Waiting. Round over. Round 2. Chad came in faster. Angry now. That's when Marcus struck. One quick jab. Then another. Then a lightning fast left to the ribs. Chad stumbled back. Now the crowd really reacted. "Did you see that combo?" Marcus stayed calm. His feet moved like water. He wasn't just fighting, he was dancing. Total control. Chad tried to swing again, but Marcus countered with a right hook across the jaw. The sound echoed. Chad backed up, dazed. His friends at ringside looked stunned. They weren't recording anymore. By the end of the round, Chad's nose was bleeding. His cocky grin, gone. Round 3. Coach Darius whispered, "It's time. End it clean." Marcus nodded. The round started. Chad barely lifted his gloves. Tired, slow, humiliated, Marcus stepped in with a crisp jab. Pop. Then a brutal left hook to the temple. Snap. Chad staggered. And then, boom. A powerful right uppercut straight to the chin. Crack. Chad flew backward flat. On the mat, silence for a long moment. No one moved. Even the referee paused in shock before dropping to count. 1, 2, 3. Chad didn't get up. Knockout. Then came the sound. Cheers. Roars. The entire crowd jumped to their feet, yelling and clapping. Phones were out now. But this time, they were filming Marcus. Bureau. He knocked out Chad. That was insane. The quiet kid. Coach Darius entered the ring and lifted Marcus's arm, still calm, still silent. But the fire in his eyes said everything. No anger. No arrogance. Just victory. Back in the locker room, Marcus sat quietly, taping off his hands. His gloves, those same old ones Chad once mocked, rested beside him, clean now, honored. Coach patted his back. "You didn't just win, Stone, you spoke." Marcus looked up, a rare, small smile on his face. "Yeah," he said. And they finally listened. Monday morning came, but it didn't feel like any Monday Marcus had ever experienced. Same halls, same lockers, same faces. But something had shifted. The second Marcus walked through the school entrance, a hush seemed to follow him. No one shoved him. No one sneered. No one mocked his silence. Instead, students stepped aside. They looked at him with wide eyes, some with nods of quiet respect, others whispering to their friends like they'd seen a ghost turn into a hero overnight. "That's the kid who knocked out Chad." He didn't say a word the whole fight. "Dude's a beast." Marcus walked calmly, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He didn't puff his chest or smirk like a show-off. He just walked, exactly like he always did, head down, eyes focused, steady. But now, his silence meant something else. That IT wasn't a target anymore. IT was powered. At IT lunch, the usual crowd in the cafeteria parted like the Red Sea when Marcus entered. People who never spoke to him before now greeted him with awkward admiration. "Yo, man, that was crazy on Saturday. You train, right? Like for real? Can you teach me how to move like that?" Even some of the athletes, the ones who used to laugh behind his back, gave him respectful nods. A few even clapped him on the shoulder as he passed. But the biggest surprise? Chad. He was sitting at a table near the back. Head down. Not laughing. Not joking. Not surrounded by fans. When Marcus passed him, Chad looked up for a split second and quickly looked away. To no words. No glare. No pride. Just silence. And from Chad, That silence said everything. Later that week, during English class, Miss Thompson was assigning a quick journal reading. She scanned the room and said, "Let's hear from someone who hasn't shared before. Marcus, would you be willing to read today?" The class turned, all eyes on him. Marcus's throat went dry. For a second, his old fear crept in, the fear of being watched, judged, mocked. But then, he remembered the ring, the noise, the lights, the moment he stood alone and faced everything he'd been running from, and how he conquered it. Slowly, he stood up, hands slightly shaking, but his voice steady. He read the paragraph, then paused. "I've always been quiet," he said, lifting his eyes from the page. "People think quiet means weak, but sometimes silence is strength. I used to think I had to stay invisible, but now I just let my actions speak for me." The room was silent, not the awkward silence of waiting for him to sit down, not the silence of mockery. It was silence filled with a W.M.S. Thompson smiled warmly. "Thank you, Marcus. That was powerful." He nodded and sat down. Inside, his heart was pounding, but it wasn't fear this time. It was pride. Over the next few days, more students approached him, not just to talk about the fight, but to ask real questions. About his training, about why he started boxing, about how he stayed calm under pressure. Some even shared their own stories about being quiet, being bullied, or just feeling like no one saw them. Marcus listened to every single one. And slowly, he started speaking more. Not a lot, just enough. Enough to let people know that beneath the silence was someone strong, someone thoughtful, someone real. Coach Darius noticed it 2.1 evening. After training, he handed Marcus a fresh pair of gloves, black leather, stitched with gold initials, M.J. "You've earned these," Coach said. "Not just for what you did in the ring, but for who you became outside of it." Marcus took them with quiet gratitude, staring at the gloves with tears just behind his eyes. Back at school, his old life was gone and no longer the quiet black kid who got picked on. Now, he was the one who inspired others to stand tall, to speak up when it mattered, to train, to focus, and to fight, not with fists, but with heart. And every time someone said, "You showed everyone who you are," he'd simply nod, because that's what he always wanted to be seen. For who he really was. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Just because someone doesn't talk much doesn't mean they're weak. Sometimes, the strongest warriors don't need to shout. They train in silence. They suffer in silence. And when the time comes, they roar louder than anyone else. Marcus didn't just win a fight, he earned respect. That he found his voice. And in doing so, he became more than a fighter. He became a champion. Inside the ring and out. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories just like this one. Speech Balloon, got a story idea or title you want to see come to life? Drop it in the comments below. Folded hands, and remember, everyone has a fight inside them. Some roar, some whisper, but all of them matter. See you in the next story. Collision.